The stars looked different from this part of space. Captain Susan Miller stood on the observation deck of the UN exploration vessel Horizon, watching the unfamiliar constellations. After 3 years mapping the outer reaches, she had learned to read the stars like old friends. But these stars on the edge of the Centauri Nebula felt strange and distant. "Captain, we're picking up a signal," said Communications Officer Eric Brown through the ship's intercom. His voice carried an unusual edge of excitement. Susan tapped her wrist device. "What kind of signal?" "Unknown origin. Definitely artificial. It's faint but repeating on a frequency we've never encountered before." Susan hurried to the bridge. The Horizon wasn't a military vessel. With a crew of just 48 scientists and explorers, they were equipped for discovery, not first contact. Yet something in Eric's voice told her this was important. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as Susan entered. Eric sat at his station, eyes fixed on his screen, hands moving quickly over the controls. "Play it," Susan ordered, taking her seat in the command chair. A strange sound filled the bridge. It was like nothing Susan had heard before, a series of high-pitched tones that seemed to form patterns interrupted by static. "We've been running it through the translation matrix," said Eric. "The computer thinks it's language, not just random noise." Lieutenant Olivia Ward, the ship's science officer, looked up from her terminal. "The signal is coming from a solar system about 3 light-years from our position. Yellow star, 11 planets. The third one appears to be in the habitable zone." Susan leaned forward. "How long until we can translate it?" "The computer needs more samples," said Eric, "but it's getting stronger as we drift closer." "Change course," Susan decided. "Let's find out who's calling." For the next 36 hours, the crew of the Horizon worked tirelessly. As they approached the source, the signal became clearer. The computer began to identify patterns, building a basic translation matrix. Finally, Eric called Susan to the communications room in the middle of ship's night. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but he was smiling. "We've got it, Captain. At least enough to understand the basics." Susan pulled up a chair. "Let's hear it." Eric pressed a button, and a synthesized voice began to speak. "This is an emergency. Broadcast from the Ilarian Collective. Our homeworld is under occupation by the Drakari Empire. We seek assistance from any spacefaring civilization that values freedom. The Drakari have depleted our resources and enslaved our people. We cannot resist them alone. Please help us. Coordinates follow." Susan listened as the message repeated. "How long has this been broadcasting?" "Based on signal degradation, the computer estimates around 7 Earth years," said Eric. "It's been traveling outward in all directions." "Show me the coordinates," Susan said. A holographic star map appeared above the console. A single point pulsed red, deep in the Centauri Nebula. "That's at least a week away at our top speed," Susan noted. "There's more," Eric said quietly. He tapped another command. The hologram changed to show video footage. The images were grainy but clear enough to see what looked like tall, slender beings with bluish skin being forced to work in what appeared to be mines. Heavily armored figures with reptilian features stood guard, using pain-inducing weapons on any who faltered. Susan's jaw tightened. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" "Just Lieutenant Ward." She confirmed it's not manipulated. Susan nodded slowly. "Send everything to my quarters. I need to prepare a report for Earth Command. And Eric, good work." 3 hours later, Susan sat in her private communication booth, facing the stern image of Admiral John Peterson. His face remained impassive as she finished her report. "You're certain about this translation, Captain Miller?" he asked. "As certain as we can be, sir. The computer confidence is at 87%. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. "I'll convene the United Earth Defense Council immediately. Hold your position and continue monitoring the signal. Do not, under any circumstances, respond or approach further." "Understood, sir." The screen went dark. Susan sat back wondering what would happen next. Earth had encountered several alien species in the century since achieving faster-than-light travel, but all had been peaceful exchanges or simple misunderstandings quickly resolved. Never had they discovered an interspecies war, or been asked to take sides. For 3 days, the Horizon maintained its position, gathering more data. The crew was tense with anticipation, speculating about Earth's response. Then finally, Susan received a priority communication from Earth Command. This time, it wasn't just Admiral Peterson on the screen. The entire 13 members of the United Earth Defense Council were present, their faces grave. "Captain Miller," began the Admiral, "after reviewing your findings and extensive debate, the Council has reached a decision. The evidence of atrocities committed by this Drakari Empire cannot be ignored. Although the Ilarians are unknown to us, basic human principles dictate that we cannot turn away from such a plea." Susan felt her heart race. This was unprecedented. "We are mobilizing the fleet, Captain," continued the Admiral. "The 2nd, 5th, and 7th battle groups are being recalled from their current assignments. Commander William Carter will lead the expedition aboard the UESS Invictus." Susan couldn't hide her surprise. Those were Earth's most powerful military assets, nearly a third of humanity's total space forces. "Your orders are to maintain observation until the fleet arrives at your position in approximately 4 weeks. The Horizon will serve as our advance, eyes and ears. Continue gathering intelligence but maintain strict emissions control. We don't want to alert the Drakari to our presence." "Yes, sir," Susan replied. "What about the Ilarian distress call? Should we respond?" The Admiral exchanged glances with the Council members before answering. "Not yet. We want the full might of Earth to be the first thing the Drakari see. Your science officers' report suggests they've grown complacent in their dominance. Let's use that against them." After the communication ended, Susan stood alone in the booth for several minutes. Humanity had spent centuries looking to the stars, wondering if they were alone, or if they would find friends or enemies. No one had considered that they might find victims, people who needed saving. As she walked back to the bridge, Susan thought about the Ilarians, sending their desperate message into the darkness of space for 7 years, hoping someone would hear them. Someone had. And now humanity was coming, bringing with them something the Drakari Empire had never expected to face: overwhelming military power wielded by a species that couldn't stand by and watch others suffer. The stars outside the viewports still looked alien to Susan, but for the first time she felt a connection to them. Somewhere out there, people needed help, and humanity was answering the call. Fleet Commander William Carter stood in the massive holographic war room aboard the UESS Invictus, Earth's newest and most powerful battleship. Around him, 30 high-ranking officers watched as a 3-dimensional map of the Centauri Nebula slowly rotated in the air. The Ilarian home system glowed a soft blue. Surrounding it, marked in angry red, were the known Drakari-controlled territories. "This is what we're up against," Carter said, his voice calm but serious. He was a tall man with graying hair at his temples, his uniform decorated with the medals of someone who had seen combat but hoped never to see it again. "The Drakari Empire controls 17 star systems, with their homeworld here." He pointed to a red star at the edge of the map. "Based on Captain Miller's intelligence from the Horizon, they have held the Ilarians under occupation for over 50 years. Their technology appears to be more advanced than ours in some areas, particularly energy weapons. However," he tapped a control and the display changed to show ship designs. "Their vessels are bulkier than ours and possibly less maneuverable." "Do we know their numbers?" asked Captain Roy Martinez of the heavy cruiser Dauntless. Carter nodded to a young woman at the edge of the group. "Lieutenant Rodriguez will brief us on that." Lieutenant Kate Rodriguez stepped forward. She was new to her position as head of strategic planning, but her reputation as a tactical genius had spread quickly through the fleet. At just 29, she had already rewritten several standard combat manuals. "Thank you, Commander," she said, taking control of the display. "We estimate the Drakari have around 300 military vessels spread across their territory, with perhaps a third of those being capital ships comparable to our own." She zoomed in on the Ilarian system. "They maintain a garrison of approximately 40 ships in Ilarian orbit. Based on energy signatures detected by the Horizon, these include 2 dreadnoughts, each likely carrying fighter squadrons." Martinez whistled. That's a substantial force. It is, Rodriguez agreed. But spread thin. Their empire expanded quickly through conquest, and they're trying to control too much territory with too few ships. More importantly, they've grown complacent. The Ilarians haven't been able to resist effectively for decades. The Drakari aren't expecting a challenge. Carter took back control of the briefing. Which brings us to Operation Thunderbolt. In 4 days, we will arrive at the coordinates transmitted by Captain Miller. Our fleet will consist of 30 battleships, 70 cruisers, and over 200 support vessels and fighter carriers. The largest force ever assembled, someone murmured. And it still might not be enough if we don't do this right, Carter responded. Lieutenant Rodriguez has developed our tactical approach. Rodriguez expanded the hologram to show a complex battle plan. We'll use our fold drive technology to appear simultaneously at 6 points surrounding the Ilarian system. The Drakari don't have anything comparable to our fold capability. They rely on conventional faster-than-light travel that takes days or weeks to cross similar distances. She highlighted key positions in the hologram. Strike teams led by Colonel Lisa Bennett will deploy immediately to secure ground positions on the Ilarian homeworld. Meanwhile, our main fleet will form a blockade to prevent Drakari reinforcements from arriving. The briefing continued for another hour as Rodriguez outlined every aspect of the operation in careful detail. When she finished, the room fell silent. Questions? Carter asked. What about diplomatic options? Asked Ryan Jackson, the fleet's chief diplomatic officer. He was a soft-spoken man with a perpetual worried expression. Have we attempted communication with the Drakari? Carter nodded to him. That's your department, Jackson. Report. Jackson stood. I've attempted to establish contact through all known interspecies channels. The responses have been unhelpful. He tapped his tablet and a harsh reptilian voice filled the room. Your species is unknown to us and therefore insignificant. Ilarian space is Drakari territory by right of conquest. Any interference will be considered an act of war and met with overwhelming force. Do not contact us again, primitive mammals. Jackson. Shut off the recording. That was the most polite of the 3 responses we received. Carter looked around the room. Any other questions? There were none. Dismissed. Department heads will meet again in 6 hours for final preparations. As the officers filed out, Carter motioned for Rodriguez to stay behind. Walk with me, Lieutenant. They left the war room and moved through the bustling corridors of the Invictus. The ship was enormous, over 2 miles long, with a crew of nearly 5,000. Everywhere, personnel were preparing for the coming operation. Your tactical plan is solid, Carter said as they walked. But there's something I need to know. Sir? You've planned for every contingency, every possible Drakari response. But what's your gut telling you? How do you think they'll react when we appear in their territory? Rodriguez considered this carefully. They'll be shocked, sir. Everything we've learned about the Drakari suggests they're hierarchical, tradition-bound, and arrogant. They've never encountered a species that could challenge them technologically. The idea that we might possess military capabilities they don't understand won't compute for them. So they'll underestimate us. At first, Rodriguez agreed. They'll treat it as a minor incursion, respond with minimal force. By the time they realize their mistake and try to mobilize their full military, we'll have secured the Ilarian system and established defensive positions. They stopped at a viewport. Outside, the stars were distorted as the ship traveled through fold space, the special dimension that allowed humanity's fastest vessels to cross vast distances almost instantly. And if they commit everything they have? Carter asked, still looking at the stars. Then it gets messy, Rodriguez admitted. But even their full force doesn't outmatch what we're bringing. And we'll have the advantage of fighting to liberate, while they'll be fighting to dominate. That matters in a prolonged conflict. Carter nodded slowly. I hope you're right, Lieutenant. Because in 3 days humanity goes to war for the first time in 70 years, and for the first time ever, we'll be fighting an enemy that isn't human. He turned to face her. Make sure your tactical simulations run day and night until we arrive. I want every officer on this ship to know their role perfectly. Yes, sir. As Rodriguez left, Carter remained at the viewport, thinking about what lay ahead. Humanity had enjoyed decades of peace after the unification wars that had finally brought Earth together. Their expansion into space had been marked by scientific curiosity, not military conquest. Now they were about to intervene in a conflict not of their making, fighting an enemy they didn't fully understand. But the images from the Alarian distress signal left no room for doubt. Some things were worth fighting for, no matter the risk. Freedom was one of them. He tapped his communicator. Bridge, this is Commander Carter. Increase full drive power to maximum safe levels. I want to arrive at the target coordinates 12 hours ahead of schedule. Yes, sir, came the immediate reply. Carter smiled grimly. The element of surprise was about to become even more surprising for the Drakari Empire. The space around the Alarian system was quiet and still. In high orbit above the blue-green homeworld, a dozen Drakari patrol ships drifted lazily along their assigned routes. The two massive dreadnoughts, Empire's Fist and Subjugator, hung like dark stars against the backdrop of space, their weapon systems in standby mode. It had been decades since they had needed to fire those weapons in anger. On the bridge of the Empire's Fist, Commander Vexthal lounged in his command chair, sharp claws tapping impatiently against the armrest. His scaled skin shimmered with boredom in the dim light as he stared at the routine patrol reports. Another dull cycle, he muttered to his second-in-command. 50 years guarding these pitiful creatures, and for what? They don't even try to rebel anymore. The Alarians know their place, replied Sub-Commander Draz, as all inferior species should. A sudden alarm cut through the quiet hum of the bridge. The sensor officer's head snapped up from his station. Commander, detecting massive energy signatures, 6 separate locations surrounding the system. Vexthal rose from his chair. What? Show me. Before the officer could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. 6 massive holes appeared in the fabric of reality, swirling with blue energy. And from these ruptures emerged ships, hundreds of ships of a design the Drakari had never seen. Before battle stations, Vexthal roared, his previous boredom instantly forgotten. Alert all vessels. Raise shields. The human fleet emerged from fold space with precise coordination. The UESS Invictus led the central formation, its massive hull gleaming in the light of the Alarian sun. Commander Carter stood on the bridge, his face set in grim determination. All ships have successfully completed fold transition, reported his navigation officer. No detection of early warning systems. We've achieved complete surprise, sir. Carter nodded. Open a channel to all Drakari vessels. The communications officer worked quickly. Channel open, sir. Carter stepped forward. Attention Drakari forces. This is Fleet Commander William Carter of the United Earth Defense Forces. We have received and answered the distress call of the Alarian people. You are ordered to power down your weapons, recall all ground forces, and prepare for immediate withdrawal from this system. You have 10 minutes to begin compliance. On the bridge of the Empire's Fist, Vexthal listened to the message with growing rage. They dare? Some unknown species dares to give orders to the Drakari Empire. He snarled to his weapons officer. Target their lead vessel and fire. Show them the cost of such insolence. The Empire's Fist rumbled as its main cannon charged. A massive beam of energy lanced out toward the Invictus. Lieutenant Rodriguez, standing at the tactical station beside Carter, had predicted this exact response. Incoming fire, sir, exactly as anticipated. Defensive pattern Alpha, Carter ordered, calmly. No return fire yet. The Invictus moved with surprising speed for such a large vessel. The Drakari beam missed by mere meters. What happened next stunned the Drakari commander. Instead of returning fire, the human fleet began to move with incredible coordination. Ships flowed into new formations, surrounding the Drakari vessels in complex patterns that made targeting nearly impossible. Sir, Rodriguez said, the 10 minutes are up. No signs of compliance from any Drakari vessels. Carter's expression hardened. Begin Phase 2. Across the human fleet, specialized electronic warfare ships activated their systems. The Drakari vessels suddenly found their communications jammed, their targeting systems confused, and their engines responding sluggishly to commands. "What is happening?" Vexthal roared as his bridge lights flickered. "Restore control!" While the space battle began, another part of the human plan was already in motion. Colonel Lisa Bennett and her Marines prepared for deployment in the landing bays of 12 assault carriers. Bennett was a compact woman with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too many operations to count. She checked her power armor one last time. "Remember," she told her troops over the comm, "this is a liberation, not an invasion. The Alarians are the victims here. Our targets are Drakari military installations only." 5,000 Marines in advanced power armor launched from the human ships, their drop pods streaking through the atmosphere toward key locations on the Alarian surface. The Drakari ground forces, accustomed to dealing with unarmed civilians, were completely unprepared for the heavily armed and highly trained human soldiers that suddenly appeared in their midst. In the capital city, Bennett led the first wave personally. Her armor enhanced her strength and speed, allowing her to move through the Drakari defenses like a ghost. Non-lethal sonic weapons disabled most of the guards without killing them, though those who insisted on fighting with deadly force quickly discovered that human weapons were equally lethal when necessary. Bennett's squad secured the central administrative building within 20 minutes of landing. As they moved through the ornate halls, they encountered their first Alarians, tall, slender beings with bluish skin and large, expressive eyes that widened in shock at the sight of the armored humans. "We are not here to harm you," Bennett said, her armor's external speakers translating her words into the Alarian language. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." An elderly Alarian stepped forward, his hands trembling. You heard us? After all these years?" "We heard," Bennett confirmed. "And we came." In orbit, the battle was turning decisively in humanity's favor. The Drakari ships, despite their advanced energy weapons, couldn't match the speed and coordination of the human fleet. Lieutenant Rodriguez's tactical brilliance showed in every movement, every formation change. "Their flagship is isolated," she reported to Carter. "The other dreadnought is trying to retreat. Disable their engines but leave life support intact," Carter ordered. "I want prisoners, not casualties, where possible." The human cruisers moved into position, firing precisely calibrated shots that severed the massive engine systems of the subjugator without breaching its reactor core. The dreadnought drifted, powerless. On the Empire's fist, Vexthal watched in disbelief as his fleet was systematically taken apart by the human ships. What had begun as an annoyance had quickly become a nightmare. These mammals, these humans, fought like nothing the Drakari had ever encountered. "Prepare for boarding," he told his crew, drawing his ceremonial blade. "We will make these creatures regret their interference." But even as he spoke, the deck beneath him shuddered. The lights went out, then emergency systems kicked in with a dull red glow. "Sir," his engineer reported, "something has infiltrated our computer systems. We've lost control of all major systems." Across the fleet, Drakari ships found themselves suddenly powerless. Special forces teams had uploaded advanced human viruses into their networks, giving control to the human fleet. Commander Carter watched on his view screen as the last Drakari ship went dark. "Signal Colonel Bennett. Tell her the orbital forces are neutralized. She has full clearance to proceed with ground liberation." On the surface, Bennett received the message with satisfaction. Beside her stood the elderly Alarian, who had identified himself as Elder Cathnar, along with dozens of other Alarians who had emerged from hiding. "Your people?" Cathnar asked hesitantly. "They have defeated the Drakari? All of them?" Bennett nodded. "The battle in space is over. We're beginning the ground operations to remove all Drakari forces from your world." Cathnar's large eyes filled with tears. "We sent our plea to the stars with little hope. So many years, so many lost." He reached out a slender hand and touched Bennett's armored shoulder. "Thank you. Humanity has answered with more than we ever dared dream possible." 6 months after the defeat of the Crimson Fleet, the Alarian homeworld was transformed. Where Drakari patrol ships once loomed threateningly in the sky, human and Alarian vessels now moved freely. The mining camps and forced labor facilities had been dismantled, replaced by joint reconstruction projects. In the capital city, the Drakari Administrative Tower had been repurposed as a center for interspecies cooperation. Admiral John Peterson, recently promoted after the successful liberation campaign, stood on the balcony of this building looking out over the recovering city. Beside him stood Elder Cathanar, who had been chosen to lead the provisional Ilarian government. "Your people have accomplished more in 6 months than we dared hope for in a lifetime," Cathanar said, his large eyes taking in the bustling streets below. "Not just freedom, but a future." Peterson nodded. "The last Drakari resistance groups surrendered yesterday. Your world is completely free of their forces. And the other worlds they conquered? The peace treaty was finalized this morning," Peterson replied. "The Drakari Empire has withdrawn from all 17 systems they occupied. They've been reduced to their original homeworld and 2 nearby colonies." Cathanar's expression was solemn. "They ruled through fear for so long. It is hard to believe it ended so quickly." "Not quickly enough for those who suffered," Peterson said quietly. "But yes, once their military myth of invincibility was broken, everything else collapsed. They had no foundation besides fear." Inside, the Great Hall of the Center, representatives from Earth and 15 other alien species gathered for a historic summit. Many were former subjects of the Drakari Empire, emerging from decades or even centuries of oppression. Others were independent worlds that had watched the rise of human power with fascination and some concern. Fleet Commander William Carter, now serving as Earth's chief military representative, moved through the crowd, exchanging greetings with beings of remarkable diversity. Some towered over him with bodies like living crystal, while others barely reached his knee and communicated through color patterns on their skin. "Strange to think that 6 months ago, we'd met only 3 alien species," he said to Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had been promoted to commander after her tactical brilliance during the campaign. "And now we're hosting a galactic summit," she replied with a smile. "I'm not sure this is what Earth Command expected when they authorized the liberation fleet." The formal proceedings began with a speech from Elder Cathanar. He stood before the gathered representatives, his slender form nearly overwhelmed by the impressive podium, yet his voice carried strength and emotion. "For 50 years my people sent our plea into the darkness of space. We had no reason to hope for rescue. Yet we continued to call out, refusing to accept that the universe would forever turn its back on justice." He gestured toward the human delegation. "Then humanity answered. They came not as conquerors seeking to replace one empire with another, but as liberators who risked their lives for beings they had never met." Across the galaxy, Cathanar's words were being broadcast to thousands of worlds. On Earth, billions watched as this alien elder spoke of their species with reverence. The Drakari believed power came from fear, from domination. Humanity showed us a different kind of power, one born from compassion and the willingness to stand for others. After the ceremony, Admiral Peterson signed formal alliance treaties with the Ilarians and 11 other species. The United Earth government had approved the formation of what would come to be known as the Galactic Cooperation Initiative. Not an empire or even a federation, but a mutual defense agreement with principles of sovereignty and self-determination at its core. Meanwhile, Captain Susan Miller, whose ship had first received the Ilarian distress call, was given a new assignment. The Horizon had been refitted and upgraded, its crew expanded to include representatives from 7 alien species, including 3 Ilarians. "Your new mission is both diplomatic and exploratory," Peterson told her in a private meeting. "There are reports of other empires at the edges of known space, some possibly as aggressive as the Drakari. We need to understand the wider galactic community better." Miller nodded. "And if we find more people who need help?" Peterson's expression was serious. "Then you call and we will answer. Earth is committed to this path now." On the final day of the summit, Colonel Lisa Bennett led a memorial service for those who had not lived to see liberation, both Ilarians who had died under Drakari oppression and the small number of humans who had fallen during the campaign. "Freedom has a cost," she told the gathered crowd. "Some paid with decades of suffering, others with their lives. We honor them all by building something worthy of their sacrifice. As the human fleet prepared to depart, leaving behind only a small contingent of advisors and technical experts, Elder Cathnar presented Admiral Peterson with a crystalline sculpture, the highest honor in Ilarian culture. "This represents the sound wave of our distress call," Cathnar explained. "The cry that humanity answered when no one else would. It will stand in our central plaza for generations, reminding us of when the darkest hour gave way to the brightest dawn." 2 weeks later, the Horizon was exploring an uncharted sector when its communications array picked up a faint signal. Like the Ilarian message before it, this one carried desperation and hope. Another plea from a species under the boot of a different empire. Captain Miller called her senior staff to the bridge. The Ilarian science officer, Tella, was the first to speak. They call themselves the Navari. Their message says they've been fighting a losing war against the Vorax hegemony for 15 years. They're down to their last habitable planet. Miller nodded. "Send a message to Earth Command with the coordinates and all the information we have. Tell them." She paused, looking at the stars visible through the view screen. "Tell them we've found someone else who needs our help." Back on Earth, the message caused little debate. The United Earth Defense Council had already expanded the fleet, building on the technologies and tactics that had proven so effective against the Drakari. When Admiral Peterson presented the Navari situation, the vote was unanimous. As the new Liberation Fleet prepared to depart, a Drakari observer watched from a diplomatic vessel allowed in Earth orbit as part of the peace treaty. He sent an urgent message back to his homeworld. The humans move again, this time toward the Vorax hegemony. They call it a humanitarian mission, but make no mistake, another empire is about to discover what we learned at such cost. When humanity answers a plea for help, they answer with overwhelming military power. Across the galaxy, the balance of power was shifting. Empires built on fear began to reconsider their methods. Species long oppressed began to send their own signals into space. And humanity, once a curiosity in the cosmic order, emerged as something new. Not conquerors, but liberators. Not an empire, but a shield. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy knew hope. News of the human victory in the Ilarian system spread quickly across the Drakari Empire. In the Imperial Palace on the Drakari homeworld, War Master Vexcor received the reports with cold fury. He was the highest military authority in the Empire, answerable only to the Emperor himself, and he had never tasted defeat in 3 centuries of leading Drakari forces. "Impossible," he hissed, his scaled tail lashing against the polished floor. Commander Vexthal was a fool and a coward. No species could defeat a Drakari fleet so quickly. The messenger, a junior officer, kept his eyes lowered. "The reports are confirmed, War Master. The entire defensive fleet at Ilaria has been captured or destroyed. The humans appeared out of nowhere using some form of space-folding technology we do not possess." Vexcor's yellow eyes narrowed to slits. "Then we will show these humans what it means to face the true might of the Empire. Prepare the Crimson Fleet. All ships, all warriors. I will lead them myself." The Crimson Fleet was the pride of the Drakari Empire, consisting of 50 dreadnoughts and 200 support vessels. It had crushed rebellions across a dozen star systems and had never known defeat. As the massive armada prepared for departure, Vexcor issued proclamations across all Imperial channels. The human vermin will be exterminated. Their homeworld will be found and sterilized. Let this be a lesson to any who would challenge Drakari supremacy. Back in the Ilarian system, the human forces were well aware that a counterattack was coming. Intelligence Officer Daniel Wilson had established a network of listening posts throughout the region, intercepting and decoding Drakari communications. "They're mobilizing everything they have," Wilson reported in the command center aboard the Invictus. He was a quiet, methodical man whose plain appearance concealed one of the sharpest minds in the fleet. "The Crimson Fleet, led by their War Master, Vexcor. Our translations suggest he's something of a legend among their military." Commander Carter nodded. "Estimated time of arrival?" 3 days. using their fastest drives. Carter turned to Lieutenant Rodriguez. Looks like your prediction was right. They're coming at us with everything. Rodriguez studied the tactical display, her eyes moving rapidly as she calculated possibilities. Good. That means they're angry and not thinking clearly. If they were smart, they'd attack multiple human colonies to divide our forces. Instead, they're focusing everything on us. Can we defeat a fleet that size in direct combat? Carter asked. Rodriguez looked up, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. We don't have to. For the next 48 hours, the human fleet was a hive of activity. Ships moved in and out of the system, apparently in disarray. To any observer, it would appear that they were panicking, perhaps preparing to flee before the arrival of the Crimson Fleet. In reality, they were executing the next phase of Rodriguez's plan. While some ships remained visible, providing a convincing show of activity, others activated their experimental cloaking systems and moved into carefully calculated positions throughout the system. Major Amy Clark led the Cyber Warfare Division on this operation. Her team worked around the clock, analyzing the data captured from the defeated Drakari vessels and creating specialized attack programs. Their systems are actually quite sophisticated, she told Carter during a brief update. But they have a fundamental weakness. They never expected to need strong cyber defenses because no one has ever challenged them technologically before. On the Ilarian surface, Colonel Bennett and her Marines continued the liberation process. Working with Elder Kathnar and other Ilarian leaders, they systematically located and neutralized Drakari ground forces. Most surrendered when they realized their orbital support was gone, though some fought to the death. Your people fight with honor, Kathnar told Bennett as they walked through a recently liberated mining camp. All around them, Ilarians were embracing loved ones they hadn't seen in years. But also with mercy. The Drakari know only cruelty. Bennett watched the reunions with satisfaction. We learned long ago that victory without humanity isn't victory at all. The third day came, and with it, the arrival of the Crimson Fleet. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in a massive formation just outside the Ilarian system. From B, the bridge of his flagship, Imperial Dominance, War Master Vexcor surveyed the scene with confidence. Scan the system. Find these human pests, he ordered. His sensor officers worked quickly. War Master, we detect only a small number of human vessels near the Ilarian homeworld, less than a quarter of the force reported by Commander Vexthal before his capture. Vexcor's lips pulled back in a predatory smile. They've fled, as all sensible creatures would before our might. Press the attack. No mercy. The Crimson Fleet surged forward, its massive dreadnoughts forming an unstoppable wall of weaponry and armor. They advanced toward the seemingly abandoned system, weapons charged and ready. Aboard the cloaked Invictus, Commander Carter watched the Drakari approach. They've taken the bait, he said quietly. Lieutenant Rodriguez, commence Operation Phantom. Rodriguez nodded to the communications officer. Send the signal. Across the system, the hidden human ships received their instructions. They maintained their cloak but adjusted positions slightly, creating a massive three-dimensional net around the advancing Drakari fleet. When the Crimson Fleet reached the exact coordinates Rodriguez had predicted, Carter spoke a single word. Now. At once, every hidden human ship decloaked, appearing as if by magic in perfect attack formation surrounding the Drakari vessels. Before the stunned Drakari could react, Major Clark's cyber warfare teams activated their programs, sending targeted, digital attacks against every Drakari ship simultaneously. On the bridge of the Imperial Dominance, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as systems began to fail one after another. What is happening? Vexcor roared. Human vessels, hundreds of them, his sensor officer cried. They're all around us. Fire all weapons, Vexcor ordered. But nothing happened. The weapons control console was dark, its display showing only strange human symbols. Commander Carter's voice came through on all Drakari communication channels. War Master Vexcor, your fleet is now under our control. Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are disabled. Your communications with the rest of your empire are severed. You are surrounded with no possibility of escape or reinforcement, Vexcor snarled in rage. I will never surrender to lesser beings. All ships, initiate self-destruct protocols. We die with honor. He slammed his clawed hand down on the emergency panel that would detonate the reactor core of his flagship. Nothing happened. I'm afraid we've disabled those systems too. Carter's voice came again, almost sympathetic. We have no desire for unnecessary death today. Not even yours. For the first time in his long life, War Master Vexcor knew the taste of defeat. Around his flagship, the pride of the Drakari Empire hung powerless in space, completely at the mercy of the humans they had so quickly dismissed as primitive mammals. What are your terms? He finally asked, his voice hollow. Unconditional surrender, Carter replied. The immediate withdrawal of all Drakari forces from Alarian space, and the release of all Alarian prisoners throughout your empire. A delegation will arrive shortly to discuss reparations and the new boundaries of Drakari territory. As the human ships moved in to secure the defeated Crimson Fleet, Lieutenant Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The battle had been won without firing a single shot.